Hello, everybody. My name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic, and I think I'm a drug addict too. Um, it's funny. When I before I got here, I wrote a little something on a piece of paper, and I just want to read it to you if I can find it. It said, "Breathe, don't lie, don't cry, and don't cuss." So I'm going to try to do all that. I seem, I'm kind of a passionate guy. I get a little nervous in front of crowds. This is definitely something that I would definitely take a couple of shots for, pregame, you know what I mean? And one of the things about recovery, since I don't, we don't drink anymore, it's one of the facts that I had to kind of overcome to do stuff like this. This is probably like one of the most uncomfortable things I do in recovery, But from doing the steps and doing this process, I'm able to do things that I'm very uncomfortable to do, to get out of myself to help others. So I just want to thank Brent for asking me to speak. I moved here a year ago, and Brent used to scare the shit out of me in meetings. You ever see this guy? He's got his arms folded, his legs always moving. And being a meeting, I thought he was going to shoot across the room and attack me. I used to think, Jesus, this guy have a sponsor or something. This guy needs some help, man. And I got to know him, and he's one of the greatest guys. And he's got a great sense of humor, and he helps a lot of men. And I want to thank Jeremy for picking me up at the airport. I flew in from Spanish Fork. We had a great conversation, and he was talking about a sponsor. Get rid of that guy. That guy's a pain in the ass. Forget that guy. So I just want to tell you a little bit how it was, I guess. I don't want to stand too long or talk too much about my drunk-a-log. But I started drinking at 13, and my parents were visiting some friends, and the teenage son got stuck in the mountains. So my father and the gentleman in the house had to take a car with a trailer to go rescue them. And there were three girls and two guys, 17, 18 years old. I was 13. And on the way back, I'm in the back seat with the three girls, my father, and the gentleman pulling the trailer down the mountain with the car on it. And we're running out of gas, for one thing, and these girls had some beer in a cooler, and I was drinking them. And I had about 3 Coors, and it was feeling good. And at that moment, after I had these 3 beers, I started feeling, remember I'm 13 years old, and I just felt so amazing. I felt comfortable in my skin. I felt handsome. I don't know why this is doing this. I don't know, just everything. I was a shy kid, and I wasn't shy anymore. And then I had to go to the bathroom. After drinking 3 beers, being 13, it has to come out soon. And so they couldn't stop the car, so I had to pee in an empty can. And I'm in the corner of the car peeing, and filled up 1 can, and it was still coming. And had to get another can, and basically I ended up peeing all over myself. By the time we got down the mountain, got to the gas station, I had pee all over me. And that's going to be a nice indication of what my drinking and drugging career was going to be like, because it continued like that for a long time. The feeling that I had at that time when I had my first drink was really unbelievable. It changed something the way I felt about life and the way I looked at myself. And it was so amazing. I remember telling myself that I'm going to do that any chance I get to do it, And I should have known right then and there that when the book talks about, they say that alcohol is not our problem, right? And that was an indication that alcohol is not my problem, because I liked it so much But the problem was my reality, right? I want to get back to that place. So as I continue on, growing up through high school, started smoking weed, drinking, did a little bit of cocaine. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was kind of going pretty hard at it. I played sports, but I knew I was doing too much of it, and I needed to slow down. And once I graduated high school, I joined the military, and to kind of get away from my behavior of how I was drinking and drugging. So I went in the military, got married right after boot camp, and had a son shortly thereafter. My drinking and my drugging increased slowly as it went on. And I got into cocaine, and I started doing things and other drugs that I told myself I would never do. I've been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous for over 25 years plus. My sobriety date is April 11th, 2011. So I just celebrated 13 years. But it took me a long time to get here. I've been to a lot of treatment centers, a lot of detoxes. And what happened was, I get out of treatment centers, and they tell you to go to AA. And I go to AA, and I hear you guys say, get a sponsor, do the steps. And I would do some of this stuff. But the thing is, the feeling that I had when I wasn't drinking, I didn't like. So I always go back to drinking. I can never stand being sober for a long period of time. And the book talks about that. So I just want to get to what happened to me 13 years ago. So a little over 13 years ago, around April 1st of 2011, I'm in Indio, California, and I got there because a couple years earlier I had gotten arrested in Tucson, Arizona, for possession of cocaine, alcohol, and I got arrested. And it was the first time that I got arrested with drugs and stuff, and I was looking at 7 years in prison. Went in front of the judge, and the judge says, give me 7 years probation. 7 years probation, no. Sorry. I heard myself fine. I'm sorry. And so with that being over my head, I ended up going to treatment again, and then I came back, and I knew I couldn't stay in Tucson because that's where I ran. I just couldn't stay sober there, And I ended up in California, got my probation transferred there, and when I was in California at that time, if I would have, get caught drinking or drugging, I would go to prison for 7 years. So I thought that would at least keep me from getting high, drinking. I'd stay sober for a year, and then I'd get high, and I'd do that for a few months. I did that for 5 years in California. And then finally, what happened was I got off probation, and I had a year, and shortly after a year, I met a girl, and she wanted to have a drink. And I said, sure. And we had a drink, and I started drinking again. And then for a couple years before that, I met this girl named Crystal who liked to stay up all night. And she liked to drink a lot with me. And I couldn't shake her, man. She was always around, man. And at the end, it was for 9 months, I was in my house, drinking like I never drank before, with Crystal, and I'll be staying up 5 or 6 days at a time, and then my body would just shut down, and then I'd wake up after 2 hours of sleep and think, wow, that felt great, and go right back at it. I could not stop this time I couldn't stop. I used to always be able to stop before. I couldn't stop, and I was about 120 pounds, 115 pounds. I got to the point that was so bad that I was staying up for being high for so long that the drinking wasn't a casual drinking. Those breakfast glasses that they have, they're kind of skinny breakfast, little orange juice glasses. I'd fill that up with vodka, put a little orange juice in it just to change the color, for Christ's sake. And I put a straw in there, and I would just drink it as fast as I could in about 3 seconds. And that kick, boy, and that's what I was doing for the last 3 months. And I couldn't stop. I was dying. And I had a girlfriend at the time. And I remember she left for work, and she would get up and go to work, and I was just getting high. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes. She says, "Michael, I'm afraid you're going to die. I'm afraid I'm going to come home and find you dead." She goes, "What am I going to do with you? What am I going to do with you?" And I remember her saying that, and she was really sincere, and I could feel it. So she left, came back from work that night, and I was out of my mind. I was literally out of my mind. She'd come home, and as she would talk to me, I would hear her voice before she spoke, right? So I'd hear her lips ain't moving, her lips are moving, so I'm like in a time warp, if you will. And I was like really started to trip out, and I was telling her I'm really afraid, I'm scared, and she started getting afraid and scared, and then I kind of got a little, she hugged me like a little baby, put me on the bed against the wall, and started rocking me like this, like, "Shh, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay." And I remember being so afraid, my heart was pounding, and I was up for days, and slowly I just closed my eyes, and I kind of like fell asleep, and everything relaxed for a minute, and the next minute I was like in the forest. And this, what I'm about to tell you, definitely was a drug-induced psychosis, but it was as real as you guys are here right now. And I was sitting on a picnic bench, and it was in the forest, and trees are moving, and I felt so peaceful, and I felt so relaxed. I haven't felt that much peace in my heart at that time. I can't remember when. And I was like, wow, where am I? What's going on? And then I just kind of started taking everything in, and the wind was blowing the trees, but I couldn't hear no sound, but everything was just moving. I could feel the wind. And then I looked over here to my right, and I saw the angel of death, right? And the hood, right? He didn't have a sickle, so I don't think he's packing it. That's just a myth. I saw the guy, so he just, I don't know where that came from. But anyway, so, and I see him, and this whole time I have no fear, absolutely no fear. And he looks at me and he says, "Michael, if you want to stay, you can stay. If you want to go back, you can go back. It's up to you." And I thought to myself, what? Am I like dead or in a place to decide to either die or go, And I'm like, started thinking about that. And I said, wow. And I felt so much peace and I wasn't afraid to stay here. And I go, well, if I go back, I got to go back to that life. I can't stop getting high, man. I've been trying to get sober for 30 years in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, man. I can't do it. I have so much shame. I have so much guilt. I can't even talk to my kid maybe 9 months at a time. I mean, I didn't want to do it. I did not want to go back. I throw some cuss words right now. I did not want to go back. So I thought, okay, well, what if I stay here, right? I felt no fear. Everything felt calm. And then this thought came to me. And the thought was, what if I stay, go with this guy? There's a dirt road, kind of headed off to the dark, whatever. And I end up deciding to stay. And then we sit down and have a tribunal about my life. Let's look at your life, Michael, right? And come to find out that I decided to come here to be an alcoholic to overcome it. And I didn't do that. So I'd have to come back in another lifetime and do it again. And that's when I said, F no. There ain't no fucking way I'm doing this shit again. I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing another life like this. So I said, all right, I'll go back that fast. I'm back in the house, right? And so I set up, and I look at my girlfriend. I said, what happened? She goes, I don't know, you were laying here and got real quiet. I thought you were dead, you weren't breathing. I go, how long was I there? She says, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes. And it felt like I was gone for an hour, if not longer. So I sat up, called somebody from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I said, hey, I'm ready to come back, you know. And the thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, if you come around here, we know. And once we know you, we love you, we try to help you. And these guys never stopped. Always might keep coming back, calling me, asking, always looking out for me. So I called Buddy from AA. He comes by and picks me up the next morning, and we go to an AA meeting. I didn't go to treatment. I didn't go to rehab. I just went to the rooms. And I haven't had a drink since, right? I've been sober ever since. What happened was, all those other years before this, right, I could never stay sober. The big thing is I never made that decision, right, to go all in with this thing. Because what I decided that day, in that moment in the forest, I decided no matter how I feel or what I'm thinking, I'm not going to drink no matter what. Because that was the whole thing. I never ever stayed sober long enough when I was going through stuff in sobriety to see what God had for me on the other side. The thing about recovery that I found out was, looking back on it, is that I would come to the rooms, I'd stay sober for a while, get a sponsor, do some of the steps, but I could never get a hold of step 3, right? Steps 1 and 2, right? I'm powerless, and came to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, which is that part in my mind after being sober for a while that I think if I drink, I can get away with it, right? That piece. So I do step 3. I turn my will and my life over to God, and then my life would get good for a while, and then I put God in a jar and I put him on the shelf, right? And then go on my life, self-will, and I would drink again, right? I never did step 3 all the way, right? Today I do step 3. I do it every day, you know? The thing about the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it describes so much of who I am, that before that incident happened, my men's group, I went to a treatment center once again in Indio, and I got out in my men's group. I got back to my men's group, and they had a tribunal, and the guy said, Michael, we got a sponsor for you, and he's going to take you to the book. I said, well, I have a sponsor. Well, no, you got this guy, because he takes people like you through the book. And what he did, he sat me down like nobody ever did before, and we went through the book. And we looked up words, and I found out exactly what my problem was, because what he told me was, if you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it, right? So we went through the book, found out I have a mental obsession, right? Physical allergy. Once I start drinking, my body wants more of it, right? And then what happens with an alcoholic like me is that the problem is when I'm not drinking, right, that's when I have more of a problem. The problem with the alcoholic is when he's sober, right? Because if alcohol was my problem, I could just put it down and walk away. I put it down and the alcoholic gets worse, right? So knowing that, then I'm screwed, right? And what I found out was there's only 2 solutions. There's only 2 solutions, either alcohol or a spiritual awakening, or a psychic change. And that's it, right? And that's it. And I know because I've tried every possible way of doing it besides this. And I couldn't do it. Now, I'm not saying Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place to get sober, but it's the only place that worked for me, once I decided to do this thing. So one of the things that I started doing a lot of too is there's a lot of moments in my recovery once I got sober this last time that things started happening in my recovery, right? My first 2 years of sobriety, I wasn't all that in a good mood, kind of say. It was a little difficult for me. I went to a lot of meetings. I had a sponsor. But I was just so uncomfortable in my skin, I mean, just so uncomfortable in who I am sober. I didn't know who I was, and I knew the man that I was before had to change, And I was that guy that drank, all the time just to, before I went anywhere, I always had a few drinks just so I'd feel comfortable, I wouldn't feel comfortable around people if I wasn't drinking, And I knew I couldn't do that, so I had to walk through this thing, right? And I did. And I was about 2 years sober. I was living in Naples, and my father had dementia. And that's funny. Another thing, God got me sober. I was able to see my father for a couple of years, kind of help him when he had dementia. And my mom in South Carolina, and helped my mom before my dad passed away. And then my dad passed away, and people in Alcoholics Anonymous were helping me with all that stuff too, right? Helping me walk through this stuff. And so I'm 2.5 years sober. My father had just passed away. I go to meetings every day, and I'm starting to something's got to give, man. Something's got to give. I'm just not feeling it, And so I said, hey, there's a men's step meeting right up the road here at the club in Florida. So I got in the car and I went, because I was going to meetings every day. Sobriety had become a habit for me. It's all I had. I go to meetings in the morning before work. I go to meetings at 5:30 after work, and I go to meetings during the weekend, right? That's all I did. That's all the only relief I could get. And plus, we go to the gym, right? We always go to the gym, right? Fucking gym, right? So, and so I'm 2.5. My dad just passed away. I'm restless. So I go to this men's meeting. I sit in the back, and basically the meeting, the way it was ran, it was a step meeting. And they have a guy share on the step, and once you shared, you go around the room, and if you have done that step, you go ahead and share. If you haven't, you pass. And the guy that was sharing was sharing on step 10, right? And this guy had about 20, 30 years sober. He was a fireman from Chicago. He started sharing. He says, I was a year sober, and I was starting to get restless, irritable, and discontent. He goes, I was losing my mind. I talked to my sponsor. I told him what was happening. And he told me, he said that his sponsor told him to read step 10 out of the big book every day for 30 days. And he said when he started doing that, something started to change. Also during that meeting, the guy that was chairing it said, hey, I won't be able to chair this meeting anymore if somebody wants to take it over, and you do it for the 12 steps, right? And you have to get a speaker. So I ran up to that guy after the meeting. I told him I'll do it. And I started reading step 10 out of the big book every day for 30 days because I was desperate, right? Alcohol wasn't an option no more. I was praying in the morning. I was saying, help me at night, saying thank you, doing all this stuff you guys tell me to do, believing that you guys weren't lying to me, And what I didn't know that God was doing for me, opening these doors. So what I did, I started reading that step 10 out of the big book, and I did it for 30 days. And what happened was, which I didn't know, I do now, is that step 10 is clear-cut instructions of how to operate during the day for an alcoholic, right? And then I started praying to God during the day, because my connection with God at that time was getting up in the morning sitting on the crapper, reading my little daily reflection, shutting the book, heading to the gym. Wonder why I'm not connecting with God. Not much of a relationship, right? Can you imagine talking to your girlfriend for like 2.5 minutes a day? What's wrong with that relationship? So I didn't realize that, my relationship with my higher power was something that I had to work on, right? What I've come to find out by doing that opened the door, right? And I started praying more during work, right? I get upset. Some guy would say something. I'm going to choke him because I'm not, I'm not feeling it, right? I go in the bathroom, pray, God, change my thinking, go back out there, help somebody, and talk to my sponsor. And that started making me feel better. And then maybe like a month later, I'm at the Alano Club, and there's an old-timer woman, and her name was Nancy, had a lot of years. And I was leaving the meeting, and she was sitting down, and she says, Michael, how you doing? I said, just sit down. So I sat down, and she started talking to me. And she asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm doing all right. And she asked me, so do you meditate, Michael? I go, well, I'm thinking about it. She says, well, you should do it. I said, yeah, I'm going to try. And she kind of got a little, try? Ain't no such thing as trying. You do it, right? You do it. And she started getting tough with me, man. It's kind of scaring me a little bit, like this guy. And so I talked to her, and I asked her if she did it. She says, she's been doing it for years, She said it was a game changer for her. And once again, I was in a place, I was ready to take suggestions, And I started doing it, My meditation was a powerhouse of 2 minutes for the first week. I shot that up to 3.5 within the next week. And I started doing that. I was probably 2.5 years sober. And I got 13 years now, and it's a big part of my game. So as time went on, then I ended up started doing that. And then I was in a meeting one time. One of the guys that's like me today, it's kind of funny how they call me Big Book Mike. Fuck, that is crazy, man. People in Tucson would laugh right now. I remember being in Tucson, and I remember I had my sponsor there, and there was this guy that always used to show up at this meeting with his big book and his 12 and 12, the big ones, right? Like I got, right? And he's the only one that had the book, and he'd always open it up during his share and talk some shit out of the book, which was always good, right? I couldn't stand him. Couldn't stand the guy. Pissed me off, right? And I held it in for a while. Then I went to my sponsor's house. We used to meet on Fridays. And it's kind of hard, man, when you're, 5 years, 6 years sober. I'm trying to think, doing the right thing. And I tell him, hey, I told him about the guy with the big book. I said, yeah, there's this this guy. He's always got his big book. Reads out of it. I can't stand him, And he says, well, what's the matter with the guy reading out of the book, And then he says, if it's out of the book, it's got to be perfect, Nothing. It's our literature. I go, nothing. And he says, well, next time he's in the meeting and he shares out of the book, just close your eyes and listen to the message, I said, all right. And he goes, yeah, by the way, start taking your big book to meeting. I go, what? He goes, start taking your big book to me. Next time you share, open up the book and read from the book. He says, the book will probably articulate better what you want to say anyway. And man, that was hard to do. But one thing I did this time in my recovery is I did everything you guys suggested that were in my circle. So I did. Man, I felt so like a, because I always thought I was a cool cat. I got to be cool. Can't be carrying the book. What are the chicks going to think? You know what I mean? And all that bullshit that keeps me sick, And I started bringing the book and starting to, share out of the book, and I became proficient with it, and now I never go anywhere without it, and at least for a meeting, most of 90% of the time, and I love that book, And now I'm that guy that pisses off the other guy, right? And so, anyway, I don't know where the hell I was at before that. Just lost that shit. So I started meditating, and then shortly thereafter, I went to started going to therapy for a little while. I had to my sponsor. I lost my father. I was in a relationship, and he said, "Hey, well, maybe go, get some counseling." I balked about that. I didn't want to do that, but I took the suggestion. Got somebody that was in 12-step background. Went to get some counseling, and that helped tremendously. Right, for a year I did that, and then shortly thereafter too, I was before I moved to Florida. Before I moved to Arizona from Florida, I was about 5 years sober, 4 years sober maybe, and a buddy of mine got a job in Louisiana making really good money. I'm an aircraft mechanic, and he was up there and he was making a lot more than I was making. And he called me, he said, "Mike," he said, "Hey, they're hiring, why don't you apply and I can get you a job up here, right? But, I got a felony, and so a few years still on that thing, and I'm thinking, well, I'll just lie on the application. I'll just, sounds good to me. I'm trying not to lie anymore, but, got to keep it sharp, got to try it every once in a while. And so it's that third step shit again, right? Right? Either God's running the show or I'm running the show. Well, I'm going to put it on the shelf, right? And so there's a lawyer in my men's meeting, and this application was just crazy, right? So I asked him if he would help me fill it out. So I meet him at a meeting. I got it all filled out, and he's going through it, and he's looking at it. And he says, don't you have a felony? I go, yeah. He goes, why is it on here? I go, well, I thought if I put it on there, I'm not going to get the job. He grabbed that book and he slammed it on the floor. He said, "What's the matter with you?" He says, "You're trying to run the show?" He says, "You're going to drink again." And he was screaming. He was saying other French words too. And he's a very calm guy, so he had my attention. And he says, "We don't do that anymore. Okay? We don't do that no more. Either God is running the show, he's running your life, or you're running your life." Right? And that was the moment where the switch clicked in my head. That was a moment that I said, "Oh yeah, I'm not ready for this shit probably," So I filled it out honestly. Of course, I didn't get hired, but I was nowhere ready for that shit. Nowhere ready. And I'm grateful I didn't get it. I owed a lot of money to the IRS. I had no money, right? When that incident happened, I got back in aviation. I had my little Ford Ranger. By the time I had my first paycheck, I had $1. And that's where I was at. And I owed the IRS a lot of money. I made payments to them, $20-something thousand. But that also started, the IRS started telling me that I owed them less money as time went on. So everything just kind of started when I started doing this thing and turning my life over to this higher power that I know what it looked like. I don't know how to do that. My life just started to change. And, today, at one point when I was in Arizona, I bought 2 houses. I couldn't even buy a piece of gum, I ended up buying a big F-150 pickup, I have a Harley Davidson. I got married. All that stuff, man, I couldn't do, and I was trying my whole life to get these things, I saw, yesterday we all went up, 5 of us, 6 of us went up to Park City to hear Jason speak, and he said something during his talk, and he said, there's 2 things, self and more, right? I always think about myself and I always want more, right? And if I have more, I think I'll be more. That was pretty powerful to me, right? The more I got, the less I felt. You know what I mean? Now, the whole name of the game, and the book talks about it, and this is a little bit what I want to talk to for a few minutes, is that, it tells us that our problem It's one of the funny things about Alcoholics Anonymous in the big book. It never tells us don't drink, right? You think at least step one would say don't drink, right? It never says you must not drink. What it does say, you must get rid of self. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles, right? And the alcoholic is selfish and self-centered to the extreme, and he doesn't think so, right? I'm like, what? And then I do my inventory, and I find out, right, that I'm full of fear, right? I write down these resentments, all these people that did me wrong. In the middle of that, I find out that I did all of them wrong and worse, right? I'm mad at them for not forgiving me, right? Well, I can't even forgive them. I'm like, what the fuck? And then I find out that I'm full of fear, right? And I'm talking about fear that financial, what you think of me, what's going to happen tomorrow. And just that's why I couldn't have any peace in my life when I was sober. How can you live a life with that much fear inside you? Fucking drink or shoot myself, I couldn't do it, right? So when I looked at all that stuff for the first time, honestly, right, I go, oh, right? So now the book says you can't get rid of that stuff, right? Because this whole program is a program of action, right? So I can know it and read it. We could talk about it. That shit don't work. You got to do it, right? When I come to find out from my program, for me, 90% of it is done where nobody's watching, It's just what I do before I come here, What I ended up getting into was I got into treatment and taking meetings into the jails and stuff because I was there a lot. And a guy asked me if I wanted to go help him one day in a meeting. And I had everything happened like 2.5, 3 years sober. A lot of action happened for me there. And I said, sure. So I started helping him take meetings in the treatment centers. And one day, after we were doing it like 4 or 5 times, he told me he wouldn't be able to make it. He said, Mike, can you do it on your own? He said, you'd have to get a speaker and take it in there, right? I'm like, I guess. So I did that. And I remember the day it was raining. I was feeling restless, irritable, discontent. I was angry. Had a bad day at work. I didn't want to go. Did not want to go. But I had to go, because I said I would go. And so I did. I went, put the meeting on the treatment center. The guy spoke, got in my truck, was driving down the road, and this feeling that I can't even describe, which I've had many times since, and it just felt like God gave me a hug, It felt like if you ever fall in love with somebody that moment, that's how it felt. And I'm by myself in my truck. I'm like, what the hell is this, right? Never felt that before, man, Never. And I'm thinking, wow, you mean if I do shit I don't want to do to help God's children, I feel like this? Because I always had my own plans to feel good, right? And it never worked out. So that was another click in my book, right? So I have not stopped doing any of that stuff to this day, right? For 13 years, since all this has happened, I go to meetings, right? I'm of service. I go to treatment centers. I sponsor guys. I do this, which I don't want to do, very uncomfortable. And I do it anyway, right? Because I try to just, I texted my sponsor a little earlier today, and I told him I'm going to speak tonight. And I said, yeah, I said, any words of wisdom, And he texted me a part of page, right here. At the bottom of 62, he texted me, and it talks about, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in the drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. And he says, God wants you to be an agent. Be a good agent, And that was this little tidbit for me. And I said, I can do that. And so I try to do all those things. And when I've come to find out that I have a little formula that I see you other guys that have time that I look up to around here. If I get up in the morning and ask God to direct my thinking, like it's in the book, read a little something, sit quiet, right? Try to get a little gratitude in my heart and go out in the day, right? Try to be kind to myself and kind to others. Go to a meeting, help a guy, right? And that formula right there, man, it's been so successful for me in my life. What I've come to find out too, though, that I've come to realize is that I absolutely need to see you guys recover. I need to see the miracle in you guys. There's nothing so powerful in my life to watch a guy change, It's amazing. It's amazing. I just, the book talks about how you wouldn't want to miss it, right? And it's so true. And I think that piece is where I see more of my spirituality than anything else, really. One of the things, too, it talks about, let me just look real quick. It says nothing would ensure immunity from drinking as intense work with another alcoholic, right? We hear that all the time. And it's been true to me. But on page 97, it says this. It says, helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough, right? So just shaking somebody's hand, at least for me, it's not, Today I know my purpose is to stay sober. I didn't know that before. I didn't know what the hell I was here for. I didn't know why I was here, right? Today I know that, and I love it, Today I'm comfortable in my skin. One of the gifts that I have today is that I have no shame and I have no guilt. I don't know if you know what it feels like to have no shame and no guilt, but for so many years, man, I just lived my life like that. Feeling that, I don't feel that today. You have to experience it, right? The meeting today at 9:30 was about freedom, and I'm free from that today. The great obsession has been removed from me, right? I'm so grateful for that. I think I pretty much talked enough, but I just do want to read one thing real quick. So I want to thank you guys for coming. I know it's been hot. I'm going to try to get everybody out of here. But I just want to read this little quote here because it's so, I feel this, and it's right there on the wall. It says reaching out, and it says, I made it into this program because someone else worked their 12-step on me. Someone passed it on to me. Someone was out there after they got clean and sober, caring about others. I need to never, ever forget that. Had they simply gone on with their lives and forgotten about people like me who were still out there using and suffering, I wouldn't be here today. My gratitude begins with the fact it was with that gratitude in mind that I reach out to others, especially the newcomers. I need to have them in my life. That is where my spirituality begins. So anyway, I'd like to thank everybody. That's all I got. Thanks.